Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley.
Welcome to the Technology Lab. This is Randy Johnston. I'm with my colleague, Brian Tankersley. He is such a good co-host to have along. And today we will continue with our conference tour for this season. And in particular, we want to discuss Intuit Connect that happened in October, a 3-day conference, October 28th through 30th at the Aria in Las Vegas. Now, the Aria is a great conference hotel, and Intuit pretty well filled it up. They had 140 sessions with 127 speakers with 6 session tracks. I've had the pleasure of watching Magic Johnson present before, and he did a fireside chat for this event. Now, it turns out the conference programming, the initial agenda, included 6 main tracks, one on business intelligence, including financial planning for mid-market and large clients. They had firm growth, as Intuit was trying to encourage people to go into client acquisition and advisory services. They had practice fundamentals for trying to improve firm performance. They also were worried about accounting and tax workflows. They had workflow sessions of various types. They had technology sessions, including practice management and other tech solutions. And they did a fair bit with leadership and soft skills in this event. They were also pretty driven on driving home their AI messaging, driving home their networking and learning opportunities, and trying to help people understand what was in the QuickBooks platform. Now, in the prior versions of Intuit Connect, there was an awful lot of sales activity, was my rule of thumb, and I attended most of them for some years. But as it turns out, this particular event maybe changed a little bit. And one of the things that they changed was the name. And, there was a question about that. Why Intuit Connect? And, for Intuit Connect, it was about transitioning this from more transactional client accounting services, bookkeeping, if you will, trying to get over from bookkeeping and tax to advisory, and trying to raise up the firm a little bit. So in terms of the programming content, Brian, we've talked a little bit about the breakout programming there, but what other areas and things were there for people to consider?
As you know, Randy, the Intuit and QuickBooks is this product is used pretty extensively in client bookkeeping, and so they had a lot of CAS services things, but then they're also trying to help folks move up into advisory to do more fractional CFO financial planning analysis, again for bigger clients.
Yeah, and Brian, on that, I think it's good to remind our listeners of your CAS breakouts, the 3 levels that I think you dreamed up 10 years ago or more, but it's probably good to call those out.
Yeah, so there's basically the bookkeeping, then there's the controller for hire, then there's the CFO for hire. And so the CFO for hire is more of a business advisor and is helping get financing and actively selling the organization. And it's something that is, again, you talk about some of the CFO for hire things, and it is a very different skill than public accounting. Even though you're still selling, it's a different skill, and so it's going to be interesting. Again, so I see people that have been middle management and senior management at small mid-sized companies are probably going to step out and take some of that business where again, the folks that have been doing traditional bookkeeping for 20 years may not be quite ready for that, because they may not have been exposed to a lot of the operational areas.
Yeah, and so it turns out, I want you to hear those from Brian, because bookkeeping and controllership we think are leverageable, but we have not found very many approaches that make CFO services leverageable. Now, it's a great practice, great business to be in, but it's pretty hard to leverage is really the idea. And I thought it was interesting that Intuit was trying to drive people into the fractional CFO place as part of their approaches. So they also,
They're remember they're also pushing the live services, QuickBooks Live, Quick, TurboTax Live, and the other things where they want to step into that bookkeeping role, and you take that in full service payroll and again TurboTax Live, and there's not a lot left of the traditional service stack for the accounting professional, so they got to go somewhere.
yeah, exactly. So were there other things in the breakout programming that were of note to you, Brian?
Well, they talked about firm growth and marketing, and again how to grow your firm sales. They talked quite a bit about how to use their products to solve common workflow problems and to serve clients. They also talked about some innovative technologies out there that you can use, and leadership and soft skills. And again, I think this leadership and soft skills piece is probably one of the most important here, because I've often thought that changing people from tax and bookkeeping over to advisory is it's a pretty heavy lift on the soft skills side. So it's going to take a little while, and folks are going to have to get comfortable with things that aren't certain. And so again, it's something that's going to take a while to culturally get there, and then it's going to take a while for the firms to reshape their own firm's culture to fit with those service lines.
Yeah, and you and I are both fans of advisory, but it is, as you say, a heavy lift. And as I've tried to teach firms to do advisory services, there's still a lot of confusion about consulting versus advisory, proactive versus reactive, and so forth. That's kind of a big deal. But one of the things that happened at the event was the CEO actually saying, maybe we haven't done the best we could. And, I'm going to take a first cut at this, Brian, to let you have some thought on it as well. But during the conference, the CEO, Sasan Gadarzi, basically issued an apology for accountants for their controversial tax breakup ad campaign. Now, I got to tell you, when I first saw the ad on TV, it's like, what? This is like the classic faux pas of the past of Intuit, where they said, fire your accountant, you don't need them. Okay.
Yeah, that was 2002, and we still hear about accountants that saw that ad, and they will not forget it ever as long as they live.
I can't forget the 2002 ad. And I got to tell you, I can't forget this ad either. But it encouraged taxpayers to switch from their accountants to TurboTax Live. And it sparked a lot of controversy. The National Association of Tax Professionals, NATP, had much concern on that. But Godarzi basically acknowledged the mistake, and he announced the ad's withdrawal by the end of October. Remember, the event was happening October 28th through 30. So they probably had some ad placements out there. But he then went on to say, look, we've got a big commitment to supporting accountants, including $1 billion investment in AI and automating repetitive tasks and allowing accountants to focus on higher value advisory roles. Now, Brian and I just set that up for you, because advisory is quite different than CAS, client accounting services, bookkeeping, and controllership. And despite these assurances from Sasan Gadarzi, basically accountants remain pretty skeptical about the genuine impact of those alternatives.
And I have to tell you that it absolutely rings hollow to me, because the $1 billion investment in AI strikes me as something that really is designed to further the live services that are directly competitive with accounting firms.
Mm.
And again, I want to believe what we have here, and I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt here. But I saw another person said that accountants are number one with Intuit, and given the number of people that the Dave Bergsteins, all the folks that have worked there for years and years and years that are gone, that used to support the programs, even the disbanding of the writer trainer network, that that kind of rings hollow to me. I it feels like Intuit is quite interested in all the data that's in here, and they are, they're starting to get their sea legs for going their own way. So, again, if I was, put it this way, if Intuit was dating somebody that was a friend of mine, that was, if my wife became an accountant and decided she was going to start her own firm, and I was advising her firm, I would probably tell her that I'm not sure that Intuit is marriage material right now, because there's too much conflict with the live services between that and traditional services that accounting firms have provided.
Yeah, so when Chief Commercial Officer Greg Johnson was going back and forth, and we've seen a lot of these chats. We've seen them at the CCH conference and the Thomson Reuters conference and so forth. Most conferences do this executive exposure now, but you know the CEO basically said, we're committed to accountants as essential partners to power prosperity and so forth. And again, that's good, but the new AI driven tools could absolutely intervene, and they're designed to actually provide some level of advice to users. Now, Brian, you and I both know the advice might be good, it might be bad, and the we are concerned that CAS practices are too transactional already and not relationship driven enough. And the AI advancements could shift too much of the client relationship management away from the accountants. So, we're going to have to wait and see what happens from this, if I'll call it from an accountability perspective. But it certainly was one of those, I guess I'll call it highlights. Now, speaking of,
Well, it appears, it appears here honestly that Intuit is kind of struggling with how it partners with other people in the current age. And again, you look at what we talked about in our last podcast about the Intuit Enterprise Suite. And again, I don't know if that's going to appear before or after this podcast, but one of the things that really strikes me about that is that they've not really released the program yet for the partners that have been selling QuickBooks Enterprise yet. And so I think they're trying to figure out what partnering looks like in this new world that we're in. And I don't know what it is.
yeah, that kind of makes sense to me in terms of the general background. Now, you and I both know many, many people that attended the event and wrote about it afterwards, Zane Stevens being one of those. And, basically, as he was summarizing the event, he talked about it having a networking focus and talking about the major trends of AI and mid-market and globalization. Yet Intuit Enterprise is focused on U.S. market and I'll get it out, adaptability and innovation, upskilling and staying attuned to emerging trends, and the human element. And after he basically highlighted that, and we will step through a few of these sessions, he called out three specific sessions that were good. Randy Crabtree's Beyond the Numbers, Building a People First Culture, and a panel discussion with Amy Walker, Ben Curtis, and Roman Villard, Hire Them, Develop, and Retain Them. And then Corey Corneo and Dan Luthi, Automation Strategies, 4 Ways to Elevate Your Firm. And of course, Dan and others have some of the Intuit training, contracts for December and beyond. And then basically the ability to see things on the show floor. And frankly, I always thought that the Intuit show floor was very valuable at this event. You got to talk to, a lot of the partners and understand what they were trying to do. So, as we think through then, Brian, some of the other items that happened, we've already really talked about the automation strategies. What are some other sessions? Again, we had a lot of sessions here, 140 sessions, and we've only got a short time with you. But what are some other sessions that you thought were worth mentioning?
Well, some of the ones that were identified by other folks included concierge client experience, integrating AI to elevate service by Keela Hill Trawick from Little Fish Accounting. Lessons learned from growing a firm from 1 to 50 employees in 5 years by Tasha Anderson from the Charity CFO. where are the women, understanding the gender disparity in accounting. And again, I will just say that having taught CPA review again, I don't teach it now, but I did starting in 1997. I can tell you that when I stopped teaching live CPA review about 2013, we were at 2/3 female, 1/3 male in the in the courses. So I I guess there's some disparity in accounting. I don't see it. I see women well represented from where I'm seeing, but again, I'm probably not looking to the right places. HR best practices for accounting firms. Again, trying to get more employee engagement. If generative AI, what is the question? I think it's an interesting topic. I think that's a good one. Role of private equity in today's accounting environment. Then some automation tools. Blake Oliver talked about harnessing AI, Zapier, and some workflow software. Some brand identity stuff. Again, building client confidence through practical security safeguards. Hybrid team roadmap. Blue Ocean, where again, this is a panel that was talking about advisory-led discovery calls. Beyond the numbers, building a people-first culture for sustainable growth, of course, with Randy Crabtree from Trimerit. How to get no right, lessons from hospitality, guest experiences. Prioritizing you, how to create a mental health plan, and there was another panel that was transforming your firm with AI from industry trends to implementation.
Yeah. So, as these sessions continued, yeah, it also then rolled over into the 4 ways to build your ideal advisory tech stack, which with Carla Caldwell, which we've both known for a long time, and Melissa Stout, as well as pricing virtual CFO services with a subscription-based model. And Jody Grundon has taught that concept for quite some time. Being intentionally authentic, curious, and empathetic. Again, a soft skills course from Chris Lazuri, and then closing up then with the Magic Johnson piece. So, when you consider all of the various sessions that were there, when you attend these type of events, we recommend that you schedule time so you can be on the show floors, and that you actually take multiple people to cover multiple sessions, and that you use it as somewhat of a business retreat type of approach. Well, Intuit Connect, is a big event for a lot of people. Any closing thoughts here on this year's event, Brian?
Well, I think I'm glad to see them move to Vegas out of San Jose. Vegas is a much easier city to get to, and the meeting facilities are significantly better. I'm glad to see them addressing some of these major topics. I think there's still a need in the non CPA market for some kind of association or organization to kind of bind those folks together. I think a lot of the practices in that area are kind of fragmented. Where the state CPA societies have AICPA and the state boards and the state accounting groups to help them with that. I think generally I think it's important for folks to get together and talk to each other and figure out how best for everybody to succeed. And I think again, there's probably a lot of success created out of this event.
Yeah, one other observation that I'll just make, because we're kind of in the same mold on this one, and that may not be as good a service to our listeners as at other times, but there are clearly other organizations that have built Intuit and small business accounting strategies. Joe Woodard has certainly done that. Hector Garcia has been doing that. You saw a little of that with Ed basically building his
Ed Kless, and his Meta Consultant Academy.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're actually seeing fragmentation here of these events. And what we have been concerned about with many of these vendor events is that they were sales events in the past. And Some still continue to be. We did see that trend reversed this year with both Wolters Kluwer and Thomson Reuters. So we're actually pleased to see that turn. But we are very sensitive to paying good money to go to an event to get sold to. So, I'm just going to ask you to be real thoughtful about how you spend your learning dollars in the future on events. Because again, some of these are very well orchestrated, very well put together, and you can always learn something everywhere. That's my rule of thumb, Brian. You've heard me say it more than once. I learn something new every day and from everything I attend. And I'm really trying to pick up one or two or three things per hour. And, on our podcast here, we're hoping that you're picking up one or two ideas that you just hadn't thought about it quite like that. That's what makes it worthwhile to have you in as a listener. So in any case, it's always a pleasure to have you sitting in with us here on the Accounting Technology Lab. We appreciate your listen, and we hope to see you in another lab in the very near future.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.